Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Human Design Coffee Talk. We have Sami Rae joining us today. Cheers, I actually have some coffee today. Because I've been sleeping like shit lately. Anybody else? Hola.
Hello.
What's up? What's up?
Hello, everybody that's joining us. Just a reminder that if you have any questions that come up in the Q&A box, I'll wait till a few more people jump on before I give a receptive disclaimer today. Good morning, Lael. Hey, Sami.
Hey,
Hi, guys. Good morning.
Good morning. You have plants behind you guys. I want a plant behind me there.
There we go.
Our plants can be friends.
This feels appropriate.
Plant time.
I picked a different corner today because I feel like this is the best backdrop that I think I have.
It's a lovely backdrop.
Yes, it's a very big.
I think you're in a jungle.
This
Okay,
is
so here. Oh, what were you saying, Sami?
oh, it's just this my most jungle corner.
Oh, your house jungle.
House jungle, baby.
What's
So for those
everyone's
of you
mug?
that are watching, oh, I got my mug. I think Teresa's doing some iced.
I got an iced coffee. It's been my jam lately.
Teresa's on the coffee kick again.
Big time.
So
It's come back with a vengeance.
Okay, so receptive disclaimer that we all are very right. So in this conversation today, we welcome audience participation, give us things, pull at it, whatever in the conversation. If we catch something in the comments, if you have something that you want to make sure that we see, drop it in the Q&A box. But yeah, so like I put in the caption, we have out of 12 variables, we have 10 right. Between us.
I'm like I'm counting on the leftness in you guys to ground me.
So,
one little one.
Yeah.
a little bit left.
I was looking at my transits today and I was like, God, this would be the perfect time for my head to be defined, but it's not. So you guys are going to have to be like, this is what you were saying, Sami, because I'm sure I will forget what I'm saying. Yeah, that's been happening a lot.
Jenny, all right.
Yeah. I've already lost my ability to look at comments. So Teresa, just to give you a heads up, I can't see any comments.
I'm on my own in the comments section.
I don't know if I can see or not. They haven't moved in a while, so probably not.
Right.
It's good. I won't get distracted by it.
Well, I could hop out and come back in. I might be able to see them. Let me do that. I'll be right back.
Okay. Man, I feel like we had to I was like so into Johnny Depp, and now I'm like trying to organize my brain to be in human design land.
I know I had to I was like, am I going to be able to get through this live without talking about Johnny Depp?
No, we're not. It's consuming us right now.
Literally woke up and was like, is it on? Is the trial on? Oh my God. Okay, what's the deal with Teresa's socks? I've noticed a couple of comments here about how your socks smell good. See, this is me being distracted.
I'm blocking this person. I don't know.
Oh, it's a weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Like, did I miss a joke? Damn. Nope, it's just some weird sock stuff.
Some person. Okay, we have to talk JD. Okay, thank you, Jenny. Thank you. I mean, we can spin this in a human design way because we know his human design.
That is 100% the way that we would talk about it. But also, I don't know. I'm like, I'm already ready to talk about it. Okay. You made me so I'm a new kind of monster now, Teresa, because of you.
And I'm the last person who ever gets into celebrity drama. For some reason, this one just really has a chokehold on me.
I've been watching it all morning. That's why my hair, I got in the, I was like, shit, I need a shower before coffee talk. But I was like stuck to watching it.
It's
You
captivating.
know I had it on loud while I was showering, listening while I was showering.
Can I go on a side tangent real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Sami, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hey. Side tangent. Hey guys, it's me, Sami. I actually wouldn't even know how to introduce myself, to be honest.
Well, your type profile for people who don't
Oh,
know.
right. Duh. It's me hiding behind. Okay, so I'm quad right, 4/6 splenic projector. I'm only 1858 defined, and I'm half conscious, half unconscious. So I feel like I resemble the whole reflector projector aspect of things. And I am kitchen's dry, inner vision, power view, and need motivation. Is that it?
You got it. I did
That's
it.
me.
When were you, what was your introduction to human design?
Can I tell the long story? Or
you can tell whatever story you want to tell.
Okay, because I've been wanting to. I've been like recapping this, and I realized human design has been like creeping in my life for a long time. But in my early 20s, does anybody know who Kashi is? Kashi? I swear, I was like, there was this random woman. I went to a bar probably around like 23 years old or something. I don't know how old I was, but I went to a bar and there was this woman who seemed like she was from the future. She had big, long, blonde dreads that she had like wrapped up over her head, and she was wearing like Burning Man garb, you know, some flowy clothes. And she just, for some reason, she locked into me. I think she was a projector. And she was telling me everything about human design, and I didn't know what my type was. I just resonated with her and like her experience. And she's like, yeah, and our auras are like 6 feet big, and they go in every direction. And it was the first time I had heard about sleeping separately, because she and her partner were sleeping separately, and she was going on about like the aura stuff. I was so like, what is this? But then at the time when I went online, it was like there was no free content. There was nothing you could really, the only thing that was there was Jovian, and you had to pay for everything. There were really, really short videos with Raw, and then John Martin. And it was like only John Martin when he was like the young, like just aloha videos where he would just like aloha you and talk for 5 minutes. And that was all I had. So I knew that I was a projector after I looked at my chart. I knew I was a 4/6 or opportunist role model. And then I knew I was splenic authority. So that was all the information that I had for, I mean, like 7 or 8 years or something. And then I moved, well, back in California when I was living with my family, a guy that I dated had my chart done. So it came back up again, but from somebody else. And he had like the full details printed or whatever. And it was something that I felt like it really weaved into my vernacular, but I was more focused on astrology. So I would talk about astrology, but then I'd be like, oh yeah, and like, you know, like I'm a projector, like I'm not really here to work. Like there were these keynotes that stuck with me and were shaping my experience, but they weren't the forefront at all. And then it wasn't until I moved to Portland and I had a roommate that I started talking to her about it. And mind you, I had talked about it a lot over all those years, but I just, with my little tiny bit of information, it was like I repeated that archetype, or I would talk about the archetype of the projector and how there were generators who were the majority, but it was such a little amount. But yeah, I moved in with this girl who just generator, also quad right. And when we discovered we were both the same variables and that meant something, we kind of nerded out together. And that was around when it just became like my whole universe. And that was just a few years ago. So now it's been about 3 years, almost 3 years of that. And somewhere around 6 months after with her was when I realized I was actually in my experiment, you know, and that this was not like a fun la-di-da thing, that it was like I drank the Kool-Aid fully. So yeah, it's been an interesting thing where it's like I can't escape it. And even when I first came back into it, I was gifted more content than I could possibly probably consume within my lifetime, it seems. And it just feels like it's been so given to me, you know, like this is part of your experience. There's no denying it. And the further I go, the more true that seems. So.
What was like, how did it feel to you when you realized you were actually in the experiment? Like, what was the signpost of that? Like the big change?
Like, what was my defining moment?
Yeah.
I think it was just that I mean, I don't know if there was a specific moment, but I remember the kind of flavor of the time was just that I recognized that there was, it's kind of like when I went and did ayahuasca. It's like this feeling of like, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And once you do it, you're not going to be able to be the same. So you have to either commit to doing it or not do it at all. Like there's no in between. You either do ayahuasca or you don't, you know? And I think it was kind of that feeling of like, if I want to know what the results of this are, I actually have to treat this like an experiment and fully submerge myself. And if years into this, I feel that it's not correct, that's fine, but I have to kind of black out to this in order to even have any clue what the fuck I'm talking about. And I think I know, I just know when something is right for me in some way, even if I didn't know at the time, you know, the nuances of my spleen or any of that stuff. I just, yeah, my inner vision was very clear at the time that this was what I wanted to do, because I couldn't stop consuming the information. It was like my mind that was so full of all this stress and worry was suddenly so interested in consuming information that for so long. I mean, I remember in the very beginning with human design, just constantly being like, what the fuck does this mean? Like, what does this mean? What is this Greek? You know, like it was so impossible to interpret. But the more I would like click something together, there was just this light that would come on in me. So it was like undeniable that feeling, you know, of just like something is igniting in me. And in a world where not much ignites me, you know, it was like just so clear this is what's happening. So it was a little weird though, because I didn't know how to translate that to communication with others. Like, oh, hey, literally everyone who's like, you know, normal in my life, I'm doing this crazy thing. So, I mean, I know that there was probably a phase for other people in my life where they're like, whoa, Sammy's like fully there. But I'm grateful now I have friends that they just know that's how I talk. Like they've even, the ones who aren't even into human design now talk in human design vernacular when they're around me, because they just know that's my world. So
I love it. Yeah, I feel like I've had a similar integration process where it's like my friends and family will ask me, well, yeah, isn't it like that human design thing? Even if I'm not using the words, they will bring it back to it
oh,
now.
I love that shit. Like my one friend, last time I saw her, she's like, you know how generators are. And I was like, oh, I love this so much.
It's
Tell
so
me more about
satisfying.
generators. Ooh, so good.
Yeah, like the first time my mom said something about being a projector without me saying something, you know,
Like,
just
wow, it worked.
like, you know, I was doing that projector thing and I'm like, oh, it stayed with you.
Patty, good old Patty, yes.
Oh, Patty. Was there anything, I mean, speaking of, was there anything about your design that was kind of a turnoff for you or hard for you to accept, or anything that you were just like, what the fuck, really?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that I have 7 open centers. Yes. Uh-huh. That's my biggest boohoo is I'm like, I mean, you guys know. I've had my boohoos with you guys where I'm like, guys, and you call me the sacrificial lamb. So I'm like, I totally That sucks. But no, it's fine in the sense that I recognize that at some point it's going to accumulate to some wisdom, like intense, beautiful wisdom. But right now I notice that that's the thing that kind of comes up, is just this overwhelm. There's overwhelm with the mind kind of perceiving that this is some big task to do, you know, that I have to get through all this deconditioning, and that's something that weighs heavily on me, is that I need to be further along, or I should be different than I am. I notice things like, this is all mind clearly, but it's like I notice my mind gets jealous of people having more than one channel of definition, like that there's like that they're dynamic in that way. And I think that what that really is just a reflection of my like being newer to the system and not necessarily having the breadth of information or understanding that I will in time, because it seems like the more that I study the information, the more I actually really love my design, and the more I feel like blessed by my mechanics in particular. And it's just a process, you know. Like I think that there are ways that I can get pulled by the mind into feeling like disenfranchised by being a projector, you know, where I'm like, but why does everyone else get to have all the fun? I mean, you go on fucking Instagram and it's a whole world of generation like happening out there, you know, like people are doing and building and all that. And I think that because I come from the conditioning that said that's what you're here to do, and I like was modeling my life after that, there's been a unique process of kind of letting go of a whole thing I was chasing, like a whole life. And it's a unique type of mourning to be like, that's literally not my trip. But I was addicted to thinking that's my trip and I need to be on that trip and I have to build something. And everything I would build, people were like, yay, good job, you're building. And they loved it and they wanted me to build more. But I was so unhappy, you know, so stressed out constantly because I didn't understand why I couldn't do it the way everyone else did it. You know, like why do I burn out and then everybody else is like, you know? And so I see those things, but I see it as the pockets of kind of like not ignorance, but just where I didn't know myself. And so I have been kind of missing that piece of understanding, and that these are like one piece at a time slowly returning to me and making me feel like the beauty of each of us kind of in our place, you know, like that I can like love and appreciate, you know, someone else's mechanics at the same time as recognizing how special mine are, you know. And how necessary we kind of all are in that sense, because if it was all contained within me, I would have the benefit of like for me, like connections with you two, for example, like to be able to process past pains in new places where the nuance of others actually brings something to me. That's incredible. And so the more I see those things, the more I release all of the mental kind of narratives about there being something about my design that's wrong, or you know, that there could ever be anything like that. So yeah.
How
So
did you?
interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
I was just gonna reflect. It's all
Oh.
good. Pass away.
How did you feel when you heard the keynote of your only channel?
Oh, I hated it. And I was like very conditioned to think that judgment was a negative, and that I had been given this like bitchy thing, especially, oh my gosh, especially when I had my first session with John Martin and he's like, guess what? You're not here to be a nice person. Like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know why it like hit me and I was so mad about it, but it was because of that weird underlying belief that there's something wrong with being a judge, that there's something wrong with being able to look out and be like, I'm not fucking cool with that. And not have to be like, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm not cool with that. Like, there's something different about the way that I'm seeing it now. I'm still uncomfortable, to be honest, with it, because I mean, I know at least I'm just thinking of examples talking to you, Teresa, where I'm like, I have to be like, is it I feel, and you're like, you can literally just talk, like it's okay to bitch, or you know, like I'll say things and I feel this guilt, like I'm the problem because I'm voicing what I see as the problem. And there have been times in my experience where that has kind of bit me because of not waiting, not waiting to speak, not waiting to share, biting back my words, whatever. And I can see how I used to let it out in ways that were not appropriate in terms of timing. And so therefore my environment and people in my life would reflect that incorrect timing. And I would feel like I was a bitch, and it would just like totally go in my head. I mean, when I went home for Christmas, I was laughing at myself because the way that the dynamic of the Pinta of my family is, I'm a bitch. Like I just like turn into this character, and like I can see all of the ways that in certain settings I have just kind of like played out that role by not waiting and not noticing correct situations. But what's cool is like, Brandy, you were the most recent like obvious example for me of somebody being like, hey, I recognize your ability to judge. I have this specific situation that happened. You gave me all of the details, which was so rad. And I got to see how it works in real time for correct situations. And I think it's just really useful for me to have more and more of these awareness moments of recognizing how it looks when I'm not correct and how it looks when I'm correct, because that too is also shifting my perspective of, and I guess it's broadening and bringing in more understanding to what judgment actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's freeing me up of so much stress of thinking I have to like judge everything, but also hold it back, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm either like texting friends, judging just for the fun of it because like I'm externalizing, or I don't feel as like much need, maybe my motivation's kicking in more correctly, much need to judge certain things or even give energy to certain things. And so I'm starting to, I guess, shift the way I perceive judgment because I'm having less and less experience of distortion with it, or moments that are incorrect in terms of like, nobody gives a shit what I have to say in that moment anyways. Why am I wasting my time? Or creating a situation that reflects on me in a way that doesn't feel good, and it only sets in more of the narrative that this is how life is, this is what it means to be a judge, like it just sucks. Just
Um,
sucks.
and by the way, speaking of that specific instance, I had reached out to Sami with something that came up in my life, something I had to kind of like, it was like regarding confrontation and balancing things, and I just kind of like word vomited to her. And she came back to me, and within the first 30 seconds of a 59-second voice note, she projected me so hard. And she just was like, here's what it is. Here's this thing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then from that, I was able to move into conversation in a situation. And it was the most beautiful thing that I have like felt, experienced, like really working through, like not avoiding confrontation, not trying to people please, really holding my boundaries, honoring the other. But literally it was like 30 seconds and she was like, whoop, here you go. Like ultimate guide, ultimate judgment of the situation from a neutral space. And we had kind of talked about that with Amanda in our conversation about reflectors. And so I wonder if this is, this is parallel, because Amanda said, like, you have to be able to judge from a neutral space as a reflector. And so with that channel of judgment, it almost, how do you feel about that? Like judging from that neutral space? Because that's what I encountered with you, was it was completely neutral. There were no sides. You were just like, here's what I see. And I was like, holy shit, you're seeing through the stories of all of these parts and pieces that I'm telling you about. You saw straight through all the stories and you're like, here's that thing. Here's what it is. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. You should have a service. Here's something to respond. Or you're not I'm recognizing you. You're not a
30-second voice note response from Sami.
Yeah, like 50, yeah, $1 or $25 for 1 minute voice note back, because it was like, I mean, it was life changing, and the ripple effect of that, of what happened in other parts, without getting too specific, was like fucking beautiful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was from that
Pride.
30 seconds.
I cried a lot. You know, what's funny too, Brandy, is like the note about like how I responded, where I was like, I don't know if anything I said to you makes any sense. It like cracks me up when, I mean, this is part of my process. I just need others' recognition in order to have a fucking clue what's happening. Because if you hadn't have been like, dude, that was exactly what I needed, and here's why, I was like, did I just sound like a crazy person? Like just
No.
cutting through and saying this, like playing this along, you know, so funny. There's definitely like a beautiful dance too of like, I mean, that to me is the most pure example of like a generator correctly, you know, recognizing and all that. I don't have as many moments that are so explicit in that way, but it's so cool to just experience these moments and see the success, like for myself at least, like seeing how I sense success come back through your sharing your experience. And man, like the way that you shared the story back, and I still think of it as something like, these are the types of stories that the world needs to hear more, are these like, even though they seem very like, this happened, this happened, this happened, like that's the external authority, I think, that is so profound, because hearing your awareness translate through a lived experience, and then to see how you carried that awareness through, that was like the crazy, I was bawling my eyes out listening to you. Like I was like, this is a very dramatic reaction, but I was like so touched by the full like extension, I guess, of my sensing into your situation, also sensing that kind of like essence wanting to be teased out, I guess, in your experience, where it's like nobody there wants to be caught in this type of dynamic. No one anywhere wants to necessarily be. And it's just cool. I mean, it's cool in the way of seeing your success or your satisfaction through that too, because just hearing you be like, I didn't even fucking give a shit what anybody else thought. Like I was just in my zone, about ready to pounce on the rest of the day, and I don't care if anybody knows what just happened. I'm feeling good. Like beyond that, it was also just really cool for me to experience the witnessing of my own process in real time and it being correct. It's like, I swear, these moments, it's really valuable to see when we're being our not self, and it's just a trip when the true self moments happen, and it's just like gliding. It's easy. There is no mental component that is actually required in order for it to happen, you know? And I think even like this live is a great example. I was feeling mental anxiety, and I noticed that I was having that. And I realized that like there are so many more moments lately that are calling on this sort of, I keep calling it like blacking out, but that's the quad right aspect of just like no more mind, boom, just whatever's happening is happening. But it creates a unique space where the mind is the passenger and is watching just whatever. And it's moments like these, moments like that, where it's just a trip, because the mind sits back and is like, what the fuck is happening without me doing anything right now? And it just changes the whole, it's crazy. It gets the momentum, I guess, going in a way. But I don't know if there was a question in what you said, Brandy. I think my mind like thought there was one, and then I pulled back out of it and went on a rant. So, okay.
No, it was literally like one of the interactions that I will remember that my whole life, and how I felt. And so from there, I was able to like maintain this like frequency anchor within myself of what that felt like, what that empowerment felt like in that situation for me, and having that guidance of, oh man, it's just like, it changed my life.
Oh,
It absolutely changed my life.
cool.
It did. And there's a frequency, and I want to talk about that too. There's a frequency when interacting with you that I notice, like apart from other projectors, the way that your cognition functions, the way that you just projector. And when you get in that no mind space, the transmission that comes out of you, and then you're like, oh, I don't even know what I just said. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's not even about the words. It's just something that lands in my body, and other people that I know that speak with you feel the same way. And so I really just want to recognize you for surrendering so much to your experiment,
Oh, thank you. I can't help it, so that feels good.
Because even though like we've been talking a lot recently about how what a fuckery deconditioning is and what a fuckery it is to just be waiting and doing no thing and there's no thing, it can be difficult. And then coming back to those times where because there is no thing, you can radiate and just emanate your essence to people.
It's so weird. Like, I will say that the daily sort of awareness of I wouldn't even know what to mentally do anymore. Like, I sit and I can watch my mind come up with a million things it thinks I should do, but it's like the more I go with this process, there is this really scary component of surrender being this thing that I cannot control anymore. It feels like something I'm doing, but I'm like, I'm fucking helpless, you guys. Like, I literally wake up every day. I have no, it's becoming, I mean, Raw had it so down. Like, I'm becoming existential. I literally am becoming somebody who has no idea what she's doing later. I mean, other than if there's the occasional thing that I agree to that I feel like I can see myself absolutely doing. So there's no question in my inner vision. But the more the cognition builds, you know, you guys hear it. I still have a lot of question marks on the material plane. Like, how am I going to make it? How am I going to pay my bills? I don't know. But this inner dialogue that's taking place with something so much bigger than the mind and the story about my life that feels like confirmation happening on every level of this experiment tells me that for whatever reason, this happening, as strange as it is, the support that I'm experiencing from like you guys, from friends beyond, like it just tells me that this is, I mean, of course, this is just what's happening, but that it's supported, that it's like, it's okay, that it's, I'm going to get to have more and more of these experiences that are, you know, maybe to the average person like magic, but are going to become the norm in which I can share with others, you know, that as afraid as I am of the other shoe dropping, it feels like this, my life is trying to affirm me for what I'm seeing in inner vision, you know, that this cognition thing is so real that we literally have been employed to think our reality when we have a full cognition of reality that's available to us, that is the actual experiencing space. And so I've been feeling so much with inner vision. I mean, with Johnny Depp. I mean, I don't think this is probably the best time to talk about him, but I'm like, that for me, I'm like, if everyone in the country, in the world, were actually using their cognition, we wouldn't be able to tell a lie anymore. We wouldn't have all of this surface level shit where we're like reading impressions, and we will be able to fully use something deeper to feel. And so my process feels like, even though it's like some days I'm like, I literally have not done anything for a while. Maybe I write something, maybe I, whatever, you know, but that's not that. I'm not building anything. I'm not, you know, there's none of that going on. But the more I just sit there and there's this cascade of mind passing through every day, it's leaving. It's like there's this sensation of watching the momentum that was underway, that had my life totally wrapped up in it, is passing by my awareness versus grasping it and making it this whole thing. And it's super fucking uncomfortable. And I don't think that, I mean, I would love it if we could all get away from that aspect, like the discomfort. But the more that I sit, I see these moments of clearing where a whole new order of seeing life is clicking into place. And makes me really excited about the possibility of the future, you know, because it makes me think, if I can literally traverse the space of being where my mind was the whole guide, the whole experience, the whole narrator of things based off of shit that I'm not, if I can traverse that to a place where I'm in my cognition and I'm in my train tracks of life, you know, like I'm in my place, like I'll get to see what's actually here for me. And the more I see, the better life feels, but it's also helpless. So the helplessness, that component is kind of like, I see my mind still tripping out, you know, like it thinks that it wants control over things that it's becoming increasingly aware it doesn't actually want the control of. It's starting to become aware of how much shit it's stirred and how much time I've spent kind of, was it you, Teresa, was talking about this, where it's like, yes, it was your metaphor of like stopping on the side of the road or something and like looking at random shit. And it's like, I can't remember what it was, but it's like, that's such a good, such a good metaphor of like, you're going along your life path. But then if you think about the mind as like this, and I don't want to butcher it, but you know, as like this thing that you just like stop, or you get a flat tire and you're just like hanging out there. I'm just going to, now that my car broke down here, I'm going to stay here forever or whatever, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, to me lately, it feels like, you know, because I do believe in no choice and no control and being on our laid out path, our laid out trajectory. So it's like, what happens though when the mind tries to take over and the mind is clearly making mental decisions? And the best way I could describe it is the feeling of getting a flat tire. It's like you're still on the road, you're just stopped and you're preoccupied with this thing now and you're trying to mentally figure out how to fix the flat tire. When in reality, maybe if you were just to wait and see what happens, somebody would come along and help you, the forces, right?
And I do.
And then you get back on track and you're like, okay, we're doing this again, you know? And so it's almost like if you just look at mental decisions as flat tires, it's just a part of life. It's going to happen and we're going to get preoccupied up here. And you're just going to, human design just allows you to notice yourself getting preoccupied with trying to fix the flat tire when you don't have anything to fix it. You know, it's almost like not having any of the tools to be able to fix it and still trying to do it from that space of mind. And then you realize, like, my mind isn't going to help me at all. I'm literally helpless. And if nobody comes along to scoop me up here, I'm just going to sit here.
Dude, and you know what's so funny is as you were saying that, inner visions going to work, but I got like 3 stories popped up in my mind of literal times my tire has been flat. And how magical life is, and that every time I thought I was going to have to figure out how to fucking change my tire, guess who did not change her own tire?
Sami Rae.
I'm like, those are the stories that I've collected. It's so funny because I'm like, car stuff specifically is actually a really relevant one. Like, just a short one was like, I had gotten a, well, not short probably, but like, gotta be honest, but like, I got a flat tire an hour away from my parents' house, leaving California to go to Arizona. I had my Subaru like wagon at the time was full of all my jewelry booth stuff from when I used to sell jewelry at markets, because I was going to go do a market in Flagstaff as a way to pay for my trip. And so I had shit just covering the spare tire in the back. And I get a flat tire and I'm like on the side of a crazy busy freeway. And of course, this is just going to exemplify the story of what we're talking about. But it's like, I'm trying to pull all this shit out. I'm kind of, you know, the stress of the in the moment figuring things out. And this guy pulls over, he gets out and he helps me. And I'm like, thank you literally so much, because I'm like praying, because I'm like, I'm trying to do it. I'm not, whatever. My dad's on the phone with me. And I feel this magic. Like whenever these things happen, like this was not the first time I'd had a situation similar where like I got a flat tire and I needed help and someone just appeared out of thin air, out of the matrix. And I asked him what his name was, and it was Salvador, which is Savior. And so I just like remember thinking like, that's so amazing, like so amazing. And then like 3 days later, I was driving from Flagstaff to Sedona or I'm sorry, other way around. I was going back up from Sedona to Flagstaff, and just randomly my car broke down, just like boop, and into somebody's driveway. And I had just turned on my hazards, and the first car that passed, they honked at me because they liked that I had a Subaru. They were in a Subaru, and I was like, yay, I just broke down. And they ended up noticing my blinking lights, turned around immediately. First car, turn around immediately, come back. They happened to be mechanics who work specifically on Subarus, which is what I had. And yeah, and the guy had just like, one of them had just gotten out of the hospital because he had gotten a car accident, like cowboy hat, was like nicest dude. And then they're standing there looking, they see that I had burst a water hose. And all of a sudden, the guy whose driveway I broke down in comes walking up. They talk for a second and discover the guy has the part that I need in his garage that I broke down in his driveway. And, and then they fix it there, but they see that another hose is about to burst. And so this is a moment where the spleen made sense, because I had to intuit if it was correct, but they offered that even though it would take most of my day to drive 45 minutes following them, strangers, to their house where they could fix the car for free, no charge, and have one of them get in the car with me just in case. So in a mind world, this could be dangerous. This could be scary, but in my intuition, I knew I was safe. And all of a sudden there I was on an adventure. I was going with this guy. We had to pull over at a random spot so we could fill my radiator with cold water because it was just draining out water. There's just like all this drama going on. We get to their place. They live kind of out in the sticks, like in a mobile home. And they have a horse and pigs, and like their dog instantly adopts me and shows me the ropes of the place. And I'm like feeding a horse while I'm waiting for my car to get fixed. And then my car's fixed and I'm on my way back home. And it's like moments like this where if my mind was in control, the stress would have just like my mind could have been like, no, thanks guys. Like, it's really nice of you, but whatever. But instead this whole unfolding. And I mean, I did a podcast on all this back when I had my podcast, because I was just like, this is insane. Like, these moments continue to just sort of shape my experience. And this was before I was in my experiment, and I recognize the way these things, they sort of like kick you into the moment when you're existential, I guess. I can't say that's true for everyone, but for me, it just redirects me in this way where I recognize how life comes in. And life orchestrates timing, like it's not this thing we have to figure out, like, who am I going to call? I'm grateful for moments that are blatant like this, because they really show me how like life has everything kind of, but it's like for fun, like it's entertaining, like there are so many stories like this within me, like of just things that seem like they're a problem are actually like an adventure of sorts, and they're meant to be just lived through and experienced. But the mind has all of these attachments to the problems and what it thinks is going on, and it's not looking at the periphery. It's like the rightness in me, where I'm like, there's so much more going on than the mind limits our focus on. Yeah.
I love stories like that, because it really does show us how life has us. And if your mind was trying to figure out how to fix that situation, who knows what kind of tomfoolery you would have created, but life just
Drama.
swooped in and whoop, that's such a good example. I love it.
Yeah. I guess I couldn't help, because my mind was like, I got tons of car stories. I've got.
It's such a good metaphor, though, because we call the body the vehicle. It's like there's all these vehicle metaphors in human design. So
true, though. So true.
And I really like how, I feel like anytime I'm kind of up in my mind and feeling like I need to figure things out, you just have a way of reminding me of that with whatever. It doesn't even matter what you say at this point. It's kind of like your frequency will just like make a little joke about my mind, or, it's kind of like you can get me to laugh at myself and laugh at my mind in the moment and realize how ridiculous the mind is being. And it's just the timing of things is something that I think a lot of us struggle with, because mind wants it to happen yesterday, and the body and the universe, whatever, has its own perfect timing with everything.
Yeah. I think this is testament to the generator projector relationships. It's essential. If you're a generator type and you're watching this and you don't have a projector in your life to go to for guidance or anything, like, get you a projector. Go, hire a projector, because it's just a beautiful symbiotic relationship, because we're doing, and as MGs, we're kind of doing it quickly and we're moving all over the place. And so having projectors in our life that we can trust for guidance, it's just like they just steer you, you know, and their outer authority, of course, and we always check in with our own authority, but it's just like the potency, you know, their aura just gets in there and it's like
You know, there's something that just popped up for me is we're all healing from misunderstanding each other. You know, and that generators have been fucking poked by projectors for a long time and guided without invitation. And projectors have been treated like generators for a long time when they're not, and they haven't been recognized. And so there is a wall to break down between the two, you know? And I think that what I find so beautiful about my connection with you two is that's what's happening. You know, the moments where I, you know, I'm going to probably always be the one to amplify a shit ton with all my openness, but the moments where I have big emotional and, you know, or just awareness releases and things like that, I at least recognize like how much you both have worked through in your own relationships with projectors, because it sounds like, feels like you've had like enough of the not self projector in your experience to be kind of on guard, you know, like with that type. And what I appreciate is that while I resemble and have been so much more like that in my past, there have been moments where through this processing, it feels like there's this dance going on of like uplifting one another in the process of seeing kind of the beauty in the types and not having these same kind of traumatic patterns play out that are very standard and typical out there for how a projector and a generator actually, what we see at least and what we're in the process of waking up in our world is that relationship being a healthy thing, instead of, you know, like what I see when I go home and my family's all generators is like, they don't want to hear it. They don't want my judgment or my guidance, you know, and that bitterness. And then it's just their frustration and just like the whole dance to me. I'm like, that to me, I really feel for people in their process. And I can understand why a generator would struggle to trust a projector, especially working with projectors now. I'm like, I can see the not self projector so much more clearly for myself. And I resonate with kind of being on guard with things like that, because a projector to projector relationship can be like that. You know, like I can be very off put by incorrect timing from a projector. I know what it feels like when it's like, but maybe because I'm also personal view distraction. So it's like when everything gets focused in on me and it's not an invitation, I'm like, what the fuck? So I can kind of relate to the process of like, if you're open and enveloping and then boom, projectors locks in on you. But I love the emergence of correctness in this way, because it's like, I don't know, when I picture a distortion, I picture like everything kind of like this, like waving in a weird way and nothing's lining up. But then all of a sudden in clarity, it's like everything just shifts and there's focus. Like the whole picture comes together kind of thing. And then it makes sense, like the timing of me coming in, like to have a one-on-one reaction or interaction in a particular way. There's so much, I guess there's just so much revealing to me in terms of correctness and like what it feels like to be a projector who's recognized in any capacity is really helping me shore up relationships where there's maybe not the recognition and there's some bitterness accumulating. There's just something really profound about the correct dance, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, it's been so revealing, and I know I've talked about this in my stories in the past, but you've really showed me correct projector generator dynamics, because I can't say that's something I've really felt before in like a close relationship where it's somebody I talk with every day, even though my mom's a projector. I've had friends in the past that have been projectors, and it was almost like, it's interesting because I before you came along, Sammy, all of my close friends were generators, and it was almost like I needed time off from projectors for a while to really get correct in myself, because projectors used to be triggering to me. There was, and I can see why other generators, especially because Brandy and I primarily coach generators, talking with them and hearing this, it's the same experience of it feels intrusive. They feel very sensitive. I don't know how to deal with this because they're creating these stories now, you know, and it's, I can see how when I was not awake and aware to this, why I would get frustrated with projectors because I had no idea what was going on from their side of things and through their lens. And it's almost like you've pulled back this veil for me to really help me understand what it means to be a projector and what it is that you go through on a daily basis. I know I joke and say you're the sacrificial lamb because you're just being pummeled with this conditioning, and I see you really being so open and vulnerable to it. And I can see why when projectors allow themselves to be conditioned but with their eyes open, they become so incredibly wise. How else are you going to learn about all this conditioning that we're all facing unless you're really in it yourself, you know? And so I have so much sympathy now for, and it's like I almost wish I could go back and redo my projector relationships from the past with this awareness, because it actually breaks my heart that projectors go through this and that generators also can't see it. And there's just this weird, it's almost like this friction between them when they don't have mutual understanding of one another.
Yeah, and especially working on the mind plane, right? So we're reading impressions, we're homogenizing behaviors, we're doing all these things that when we're trying to read each other from that space, the information is limited, it's twisted, it's biased, it's all of that. And I think that one of the things that I love the timing of our connection, because I think so many things have come into both of our experience, Teresa, Brandy too, because of the conversation, thinking of Teresa specifically just because of the timing of us talking about cognition, and then it kind of coming in, and then Brandy talking to you about it a little bit too. But it's like this building of cognition, I think it's so important. It just feels like it might be the one thing we're moving into is cognition, because as cognition builds, I don't think you would have any way of interpreting me in any other correctness. Like your mind could easily interpret me through, all my fifth lines. There's so much mental projection that could happen. There's so much the mind can do with relationships. I mean, I even experienced, which last night we were sharing, or yesterday, Teresa, we were sharing a little bit about just the mind in such a removed way, where it's like the mind is doing that. The mind is there. If we're in that space, that's what we're doing, right? But if we're able to pull back, we're in the land of cognition and we're watching the mind, but we're in our ability to actually sense one another. So like I can in inner vision, I can see you versus think you, right? But when I'm thinking you, it's all this story, it's narrative, it's confusing. But when I'm in my cognition, I know where you're at. And I continue to verify through that experience that what I see in my mind is not the same as what I truly see within me. And there's just more and more experience going on like that. But I'm like, I don't think that in the realm, it's like a literal place that we experience, a dimension. Essentially, it's like the dimension of mind keeps us in a limited capacity where there is no answer, there is no fixing anything, there's no relationship, but when we come into cognition, I think that's where we're starting to experience like this truth unfold, where like what you're building isn't on the surface of mind anymore. What I'm guiding is no longer on the surface. We're taking things into we're fucking new dimension, like totally different dimension.
I love how you bring it to cognition all the time. That's something that's really helped me in our connection, is like you recognizing my cognition, and it almost feels like you speak to my cognition, and it allows my mind to step aside, and I can actually tune into my feeling cognition and speak from there versus all the things that my mind wants to say, and it almost feels like this is weird, but whenever we're having a conversation, like let's say one of us triggers the other, or there's some moment where there's a trigger there, an activation, it almost feels like we both like step aside and we step out of the mind, and we're able to just objectively look at what the mind is saying, but actually tune into our cognition and feel what's really happening, and it's like, I almost envision us like in a room together and then above the room.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like going into this different dimension where there's different floors and you're just kind of witnessing all of the layers that's happening. And then, you know, it's normal to have an emotional activation around something. And there's a lot of that. You know, there's been a lot of moments where we've both been crying and expressing and really feeling all the feels. But it's so different because I feel like in the past with friendships that I've had, especially with projectors, it would be them coming to me and telling me the story that they've created around me, but holding on to it like it's the complete truth. And then me feeling like I don't have a voice. And so I'm getting really defensive because that doesn't feel like the truth for me. And then there's just this whole like not seeing each other and not even being able to step a toe into each other's reality for a moment, you know? And so having the moments with you, it's been really healing because I'm like, oh, I don't actually feel attacked right now. I just feel like you're sharing your feelings with me. And I'm actually really honored that you're feeling vulnerable enough to express yourself and that you can also witness the stories that your mind is creating within that container.
Yes. Can we normalize starting conversations with people when we feel like it's a safe container? Because the three of us do this often. The story I'm telling myself is the story that my mind is saying. This is what my mind is saying, the story I'm telling myself. And then from that point, you can kind of almost be like, oh yeah, my mind is telling me this story. And then from there, we can like hold each other in that space with compassion, but not move from that space. It's like that needs to come up. We need, you know, let the story out. Here's the safe space. Okay. And then, like you said, like pulling above in the room and like we're watching each other say the stories. I don't know. It's fucking fantastic.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking that maybe this was like a timing thing or something, but this has actually come up for me recently is like, when it's not, I was thinking of it as directive. Like if it's directed at you, then it's impossible to hear because then it's like, and this goes back to like, just like I statements, you know, like if people would stop saying like you, it would be less triggering because we don't feel like, we should never feel like we are somehow responsible for the inner state of another person. I mean, this is like self-help 101 in terms of like how to communicate. This is what I learned in massage school. I was like, this is so valuable to speak for myself. However, there's still just like that energetic component of when we try to codependently act where it's like, yeah, but you make me feel this way. Like I almost joke, like I was joking that Amber Heard makes me cuss was my comment to Teresa earlier. And I was like, I almost corrected myself and I was like, I know I'm joking, but like I almost would be like, no, she doesn't make me. It's like she doesn't actually make me, but there's something so profound in just being able to share, which I think is the external authority that we're like actually here to have. It's not so that we affect change in one another because that's the mind with its agendas, where we think we know how people should be behaving or treating us, or it's like we're trying to control a reality, literally like you act like this and then everything will be fine. Like it will be great if you would just cut your shit out because that's what I need you to cut your shit out. I get it. I get being in situations that are, you know, like just thinking about the walkie-talkie story, Teresa, for some reason, like we're like want to control, like things need to be a particular way, but I'm just like, I don't know. I got distracted thinking about that story.
About my parents?
Yeah. Or just like when we feel like we have to manage everything, you know, I guess that's what it kind of comes to. And it's such a trippy, weird feeling to let go of that and just have this like, it feels like free falling to be that level of honest, you know, like to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and I don't actually have any expectation of you feeling or responding in any particular way. It's a weird feeling because we're also used to, I mean, I'm used to, at least in my experience, if I speak up for myself, there's always pushback. And if I don't have the expectation that the other person changes and there's pushback, it's impossible to feel heard, you know? And so it kind of is this like, unique thing where it's not only when we speak for ourselves to speak for ourselves, but hear for ourselves and recognize when other people are just talking about their experience without personalizing it. You know, I guess that's my like power view, being like, don't take it so personally. But really, there's like a distorted version of personalizing that happens. Teresa is a great example of not distorted. You're just like, I'm just all up in my own business. Like, that's correct, you know, versus me. Like, this is about me. That just like, it has such an amplified, yeah. Mm-mm.
Oh man. Yeah, it's like and that's something that you've been speaking to me about the last week, is like releasing the need to feel like you need to manage everything. And I think that's something a lot of projectors can probably resonate with, because it's almost like, from what I've seen, projectors are like, okay, I have this awareness, I can see it, so I have to manage it. The pressure is on me. The weight of the world is on my shoulders to manage all of this, because I can see all of the pieces.
And nobody else is doing anything about it. I guess I'll just take it on myself. I'll do it all.
Yes. Yeah. And my parents are a great example of this. I mean, I don't want to air too much of their dirty laundry, but it's just kind of funny because my mom is a projector and she's in her 70s, and her body is finally starting to tell her, you cannot manage all of this. You know, she hurt her hip, and it's like my dad gave her a walkie-talkie so that she could beep
Manage
him when
him.
she needs him to do something, because she's the house manager. And my dad's like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I'm just doing all my projects, you know? So it's just when you can witness it in other people in that way, you really start to see it, how this is happening. And it's not wrong. That's just her experience. And
we can feel the tension, you know, where it's just like, man. And what's crazy in situations like this, when we think about like the not self of any type, but I mean, I'll just use the projector as it, because they're like the super generator, the super slave. It's like, what a mental prison, you know, like that shows the extreme kind of psychological hold that this mental realm we've created has on people. They have all of the justifications and reasoning there why they have to abandon themselves, that they have no connection to their inner cognition. They have no like trust in their authority, because I mean, I get it, because I'm like, my mind is like, are you sure? Like, constantly, are you sure you want to be in this experiment? Because, like, how are you going to pay your bills? And blah. And I'm like, do you really want to be in that endless hamster wheel of mind that's just like, I don't know, Russian roulette, like whatever random solution it has based off of whatever it sees, which is totally could be random. It's like, with the way that openness works for me, at least, the conditioning is so constant that I can see how endlessly I was making decisions based off of whatever flavor of crap was coming through. It's like why I'm so kind of obsessing about transits right now, is I'm like, whoa, with all of my openness, if I don't have any kind of guide to see what is happening, I could easily identify with so much that's not me, you know? So it's been useful, I guess, in that sense, to recognize like, oh, I don't know, on multiple levels. That might be a total tangent not to go into, but.
I mean, I've been really enjoying you integrating this information about transits, because it's something I'm fascinated by. And it's like you're studying it and learning about it and then telling me the cliff notes. And I'm like, yes. I love a shortcut where I don't have to go learn about all of this.
I love externalizing it, because I'm like, now I get it because I told someone.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I feel like you've had a lot of aha moments learning about the transits. Is there one that you would want to share?
I mean, I love that where you see like, definitely, like the one we were talking about yesterday that I was trying to make sense of to you, where what was it? It's like, if you have definition that you don't usually with the transits, the pressure goes away. So like me with my 7 open centers, I didn't have any way of understanding this, where I kind of, I guess, misunderstood that it's as if I would just amplify and distort these things just because they existed. And what I'm seeing is that it's actually that I have less of that pressure. So for example, the other day I noticed, and I kind of wrote about it in my stories, but it was like, I noticed that the only center I had left undefined was my ego. And I saw the bridging gates that I had, and I was able to see that, or that with the transit, I could see that I had all of this emphasis on my open ego. I was really feeling the self-worth component in my mind. And that it was like something clicked, and I realized that in this moment, I could easily identify with thinking I am all this definition. Like, ta-da, I am this. And now I have one center that is open, and there's emphasis where I can make a not self decision in this open ego, or from the bridging gate, whatever, thinking that I need that missing piece, but also that I could make it from this decision, or make a decision from this place of definition as well, like thinking I have all this. And so it brought me to a place of recognizing how the strategy and authority actually comes into play in the now, because the environment is always shifting. The aspects of mind are always shifting. And if we're in that realm of making decisions from those places, which are not self, then we don't have any place for the strategy and authority to arrive. So it's really like in this endless now of the changing transits, whatever, that we wait for whatever our piece is. And so for me, it made me aware that certain things dependent upon the transit, or, you know, whatever's going on, are going to happen in my experience. It could be an inner thing. It could be a person coming into my life, whatever it is, but it's going to come from something in this atmosphere. And that's when my spleen will make a decision. That's when inner vision will come through. But there is something that will come out of this storm for me to have my particular strategy and authority response, or my invitation, I guess, will come. But it's going to be nuanced for me. And so it's not this overall weather that's making me make a decision in a particular way. It's literally that this weather is creating a unique type of experience I will have, but my authority will know what is its thing to respond to, or, you know, have its reaction to in all of this. I don't know if that made sense, but it's like I can see how it's made me more connected to the transits in a way of understanding that they're creating something unique for my particular authority to have an engagement with. So, yeah, it's not like I have to do anything with the information about the transits. There's nothing to do with it. There's nothing that I can utilize or any of that shit, you know, like using the transit energy. It's just like I can sense it. I mean, I'm lit the F up on sacral, and I can feel that, you know, I can feel the support that's there, because now something that wasn't consistent is consistent. Like, sure as shit, I'm up at night, like, will I ever be able to fall asleep? I just get into bed early, you know, like I'm still aware of myself, but I recognize I'm in a new part of the territory. Like I'm in a new place with different vibes all about it. So it's helping me, I guess, to just like recognize that life is happening and creating all these different circumstances, and that all I have to do is just wait and watch. And I'm nerding on the transits because it's just so, it's freaky. Like if we're having a conversation and we like look at the transit and it's exactly what we were just experiencing or something, where it's just like, okay, yeah. Like, does anything we ever say, like, do we have anything original to offer? I don't know. But it's just so cool to see, to like verify the helplessness. I actually emailed John Martin about it the other day, because I'm like progress reporting, random to externalize. And he was like, honestly, I think it's great that you're verifying this stuff for yourself. Like you're actually seeing how the transits flavor the particular mental state that you're having, because we think our thoughts are so unique and so special to our life circumstances, but we don't recognize life circumstances are part of this storm brew, this like weather that's happening, you know, that like the people that say the things to us at the particular time, we store it as a memory because of that person, but we never think about that added component of the weather, you know? So I think it's just cool for me to recognize, like, especially being a receptive being, things come to me. So it's unique to see how these things show up in my experience via the transits. So I'll probably be nerding out about that in my stories more over time.
I love it. I mean, like I said, I've always been so curious, and I feel like the transits are something that verify your experience. And so I think sometimes when people talk about studying the transits, oh, you don't really need to pay attention to them and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's fascinating because you can witness it out in the world. You can feel it in yourself, and it verifies the information for you. Otherwise, not that you need to, if you're not into the transits, don't worry about it. But to me, it allows us to actually zoom out and really see this as a program. You know, Ra is always referring to it as the program, this program that we're living in. And like you said, it just verifies the helplessness of it. It's like, these aren't even my thoughts. These are neutrinos pumping through me right now. You know, it's like, it's not even my mind. I'm being brainwashed, essentially. So it helps you have a lot of compassion for yourself and others. You know, especially when out in the world. I remember when Gate 36 started transiting, I was just seeing, you know, just crisis everywhere. And I was having my own internal crises, and I'm witnessing these little mundane crises, and I'm like, oh man, people have no idea, and they think it's their fault that happened, but it's just part of the program.
Yeah, I think that with that gate specifically, or with any of them, when you have them naturally, they might feel a little bit more with a little extra spice to them. But then you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I experience all the time. And it's like you can like nurture, this is just me in my design speaking, but you can nurture the people better from that place of like, oh, it's okay. Like when Gate 36 was transiting and one of my employees called, she was like, I'm late for work. I don't know what just happened. My rim on my car, blah, blah, blah. And she was like freaking out. And I was like, it's okay. Like that stuff happens, you know, it happens. I wasn't like up about it at all. And then I was like, oh, little mini crises everywhere. You know, you see that. And then you're just like, it's okay. This is just.
You have 36 too?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another random note is that if you have the gate, if it's a dormant gate for you and it's transiting, that it's an inner experience rather than like something coming into your physical experience from someone else or whatever, which is interesting because because I'm like, there are people who are having life experiences that are crisis. And then there are others who are having more of like an emotional, internal, like what's, and that's all flavored, you know. And then I was talking to Jen Zarda about this, but about how Neptune veils whatever gate it's in. So it's kind of like you just got to leave it the F alone. So Jupiter and Neptune being conjunct right now in 36, it's like it's veiling it's just veiling everything around the crisis that people are going through, which is, I can get that. Like my mind doesn't actually have any idea what the fuck is going on. Like it could try. It could definitely try to pinpoint what I'm experiencing internally. I mean, I had a big emotion freak out the other night, and I'm like, I just watched this experience and like, this is just a happening, like some weird spontaneous exorcism or something. It's just like happening because, you know, the mind will go, oh, well, this happened and that's why. But it's like, dude, I don't know. If you like sit back and actually watch the whole process, it can be so interesting to see how it's like this. I just like, I'm on my path, and I just, now this thing clicked in, and then this thing clicked in, and then ta-da, we've got ourselves a brew of this experience. And it feels like that part of it for me, it's like I'm not able to make a mental connection fully. I just know that there is a lot of crisis energy happening.
Yeah, it was interesting. You and I the other day, we were nerding out together, and like, you know how you can look up any chart in the past or future, and we were looking up pivotal moments in our lives where we had to make decisions and what was transiting. And for some reason, I wanted to look up when I was graduating high school, because I just remember that being a very pivotal moment in making a decision, like which direction am I going to take my life. And Gate 2 was in the conscious sun, the week I graduated high school. And I remember just feeling so much pressure around my direction in life at that moment. Um, yeah, and I even looked up, when my husband and I got married, and I'm pretty sure gate 49 was transiting, and like there was a lot of like marriage themes that week.
Isn't it funny
So,
though? Because it's like the transit is like kind of like mind, but
mhm.
it's like you could fall for the trap of making a decision because of the transit. But there's like, I swear, I don't know how to word this ever, but it's like where you go through a mirror and it's like everything kind of looks the same. It's just like different. It's like the energy is there to support those things happening.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
through your authority, because it's like there's nothing like, if that's happening, like, oh, isn't it crazy that people are all doing this? It's like, no, that's what we're that's what we're passing through, like that's what the program is supporting right now. That would be the time for marriage. That would be the time for the direction of the self, and for an opportunity to come in for you to respond, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, tangent a little, but I'm just thinking like this is the same kind of thing with like, there's a difference between the mind thinking that it needs to like study human design, and then there being this like natural excitement and enthusiasm. Even John Martin, when he responded to me, was like, I don't, just because I'm not interested in transits doesn't mean that that's not what you're here to be interested in, And so it's like there's just these lines that I'm noticing where it's like there's something, when correct, it can look like everything else.
It reminds me of Ra's lecture about generators, and he's like, you could have a response to moving to Antarctica and studying whale blubber. It's like, and if you have a response for that, I hope you do. Maybe whale blubber is what you dedicate your life to. And it's just like, it really helps you realize what's correct for you. It could seem so like ridiculous or unimportant to anybody else, but it is part of your life story,
Yeah, and letting go of the mental, well, not like we can do anything about it, but maybe just recognizing the mental story we've built off of the not self and attachments to like living a life that's not for us, so that we can kind of get to that place. Maybe it is something simple, and we have to do a lot of deconditioning to uncover the fact that we didn't give a shit about any of the stuff that we thought we did. Yep. And we would actually we would be much happier with the blubber, like wait a second. I mean, another John Martin, like when I had my first session with him, he's like, how do you even know that you are going to give a shit about any of this human design stuff? Like, as you become yourself. And at first I was just so offended, like, oh, how could you say something like, I found the thing, blah, blah, like my mind, but then it hit me. I'm like, that would be beautiful if I didn't give a shit about human design, and I just like discovered that I feel so in my frequency that it doesn't matter, and I'm in tune that way. Then amazing, like that to me that would be the goal, because I don't want to live in human design land of the future, where it's like only us having conversations like this. I think it's meant to be somewhat like the world we see, but correct, instead of the distortion of everything, blah, 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 but things kind of clicking in, people being in their satisfaction, building what they're building. Projectors, not necessarily, I mean, maybe for now we're doing the guide over from one dimension to the next, but in the correct place of dimension, I'm imagining what it could, like how mundane it could look to be correct,
Yeah, I feel like I've really, just looking back on my life, and it's kind of coming back to that place of non-attachment and what's correct for you in this moment. You have no idea how long it's going to be correct for you. And I think as MGs, we're so used to pivoting a lot that I've learned to just not be attached to things. And like when I was a personal trainer, I co-owned a fitness studio. I thought that was going to be my entire life. And I remember my mind saying that to me. You found it. This is your thing. You're going to build your entire life around this forever. I would have never thought I'd be doing this right now, So I've come to this place where I don't hold on tight to anything really. And I'm just amazed at the world showing me where I'm going next, or my response showing me where I'm going next.
It's thrilling.
It's like we're able to like safely practice non-attachment without bypassing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because you're still fully in the experience, you know, right now, this is my life, and I'm fully in that, in the same place, and in the same sentence, I can say, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Mhm.
I have no idea what I'm going to respond to.
Yeah, none.
It's such a weird feeling, right? Like this unknown. I was having a conversation with my sister last night, and she was like, because she's moving to Portland in a month, and she's like processing all of the like fears and everything, and it's just like, yeah, like you won't know no matter what you do. Like you could not move, and then something crazy will happen, or you could move and something will happen. Like it doesn't matter how your mind tries to frame its reality in order to block out these truths that we are living in a world that is constantly shifting, and that, you know, that we don't have the control the mind has tried to build in the
Right.
way the mind has tried to build it for us. And there is such an edge to living in that way, living on the edge, literally, of like, I don't know. I mean, you know, being existential for me, it's like, it's very right now, you know, like I don't know what it's like to be emotional in that sense. So I don't want to make it sound like life is existential necessarily, but it's like there are these timelines that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can make that make more sense, but it just feels like it feels like things start to pull into the timeline in that sense. And for me, more and more, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know with like, like literally anything. I'm thinking like, if I have a friend who is emotional, who is on their timeline, I don't know when our timelines are going to line up. I don't know anything in terms of timing. I don't know why I get like, you know, if we say we want something, this is totally a tangent, but if we think we want something, why sometimes things will instantly manifest in our experience, or why they do later, it's just such a unique space, I guess, to get to that surrender of trusting life to deliver things and not being so scared of what it's going to bring,
Right.
and being more open. And I think that sometimes those fears will make us make decisions not as ourselves, which is often why we end up experiencing as much resistance as we do,
Mm-hmm.
or being in situations that we don't like, which can flavor more fear over the unknown, you know.
Getting the flat tires.
Poor little flat tires.
Yeah, and it gets to a point where you just like enjoy being surprised by what's coming next instead of like planning it all. Like I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, even though it's like can be mental fuckery. It's like I
Mm.
actually, when I think about it, I'm so much more satisfied by just waiting. By just waiting.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Just waiting to respond. It's kind of like, I feel like strategy is just always that thing you can fall back on.
Mhm.
And you really start to realize that's what it's for, is to bring you back to the present and take you out of the mental fuckery and just being like, well, there's nothing for me as a generator, there's nothing for me to respond to right now. So my mind is just creating something that I can't do anything with because don't have anything to respond to. So I guess I'm just gonna wait, you know?
I think that the waiting is such a cool topic too, because it's like, it's really shown me. My sister yesterday was like talking about like how she doesn't know what to do with herself, like she gets so mentally whatever, and I'm like, yeah, like, can you imagine that we actually didn't like start out this way of having our heads be full all damn day long with everything we think we're supposed to be doing? Like, yeah, we used to like work in the fields or prep our food, but like our time wasn't like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't this thing that we needed to like fill. And so, you know, when people ask me what I've been up to lately and I can't quantify something that I'm doing, it's such a unique feeling of like, some days, yeah, my mind will get so down about it and call me like lazy or whatever, but like are just dedicated to being, like a
Mm-hmm.
full day of just, I just exist today, world. You know, like I literally just exist, and I don't I don't have anything for you, you know, like I didn't prove myself today. I didn't whatever. But it's so interesting to think of that as actually fertile time in my timing, you know, that like I couldn't possibly give, like in the situation with Brandy where she reached out for something, I couldn't give that kind of thing all of the time. I can't. I'm not designed to. So being able to fill my waiting with ease, and like I was kind of starting to write last night about like what it could be like to wait in our signature, you know, like for you as generators to actually wait in the sensation of satisfaction rather than getting frustrated with waiting, or like a projector actually feeling a like permeating feeling of success in the waiting versus getting bitter about having to wait, you know, angry about not manifesting, like all of that, like what could it look like? And I think that's what we are moving toward, is like actually existing in a place of like the waiting isn't waiting for something. It's literally just the in-between times and understanding the ebb and flow of what brings us to our signature, you know, whatever per person.
So good. I feel like that's a great place to wrap up because I know Brandy had to get going at the 90-minute mark.
It's 12:30.
Yeah. Such a good little bow to tie it up with. Have fun waiting, everybody.
Nobody had any questions for me. That's good.
I mean, I felt like we were flowing, you know? It just I know somebody asked, there actually wasn't any questions in the question box. I did see one about quad rightness, but I feel like you just really beautifully showed us what quad rightness is.
If anybody wants to connect with Sami, we will tag her in the caption. Just Sami Rae is her Instagram handle. She does do one-on-one sessions. So yeah, go check it out.
Check me out. So nice to hang out with everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys later.